That small notch cut into the side of a hard gelatin capsule is a tamper-evident seal, an anti-counterfeiting device, and a precision locking mechanism, all at once. It is called a locking ring groove, and without it, the capsule you just swallowed could pop open in your pocket, get pulled apart by a counterfeiter, or fill unevenly on a machine running 200,000 units per hour. Here is exactly what you are about to learn: what that notch actually does mechanically, why pharmaceutical manufacturers started adding it in the first place, how it changed the entire capsule filling industry, where it failed catastrophically, and why that failure led to the version you see today. For most of the 20th century, hard capsules were two plain cylinders of gelatin, a cap and a body, that slid together and stayed shut purely by friction. Eli Lilly patented the two-piece hard gelatin capsule in the 1870s. Parke Davis industrialized it in the early 1900s. For decades, friction was considered good enough. Pharmacists filled capsules by hand, quantities were small, and the idea that someone might systematically tamper with a sealed bottle of medicine was not a design problem anyone had formally solved for. The capsule was just a convenient delivery vehicle. What it looked like on the inside of the joint barely mattered. Then came the filling machines. By the 1960s, automated capsule filling equipment could process tens of thousands of capsules per hour. At that scale, friction becomes a liability. A plain friction capsule relies on a tight radial fit between the cap and body. But gelatin is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from the air, and as humidity changes, the capsule walls swell or shrink by measurable fractions of a millimeter. On a high-speed filling line, a capsule that has expanded slightly will not seat fully. A capsule that has dried will seat too loosely. Either way, you get product falling open midline, powder contaminating adjacent capsules, and fill weight variation that fails quality control. The engineering solution was not to control humidity better, though they do that too. The solution was to give the capsule a positive mechanical lock. The locking ring groove, a narrow circumferential channel molded into the inside of the cap, which mates with a raised bead on the outside of the body, means the capsule snaps shut and stays shut regardless of minor dimensional drift. Capsule introduced a version of this geometry in the 1970s, and Qualicaps and ACG followed with their own variants. The snap force is typically in the range of 5 to 15 newtons, enough to survive a filling line, a tumble coater, a blister pack machine, and a trip through a consumer's medicine cabinet without popping open accidentally. Now look at the same notch from a different angle: tamper evidence. After the 1982 Tylenol murders in Chicago, where 7 people died after someone replaced Tylenol capsules with cyanide-laced versions and returned them to store shelves, the FDA and pharmaceutical industry moved fast. The Tylenol capsules at the time were plain two-piece friction-fit shells. They could be pulled apart, refilled, and reassembled with no visible evidence. Within 2 years, the industry had largely standardized on sealed capsules. The locking ring groove is part of that. But manufacturers also began applying a secondary banding process: a thin strip of gelatin or polymer sprayed or rolled over the capsule seam. You will see this on branded prescription drugs especially. The band has to be physically broken to open the capsule. The notch locks it mechanically. The band proves it has not been opened. Together they create 2 independent layers of evidence. Neither one alone is considered sufficient anymore for any solid oral dosage form sold in the United States. The deeper reason the notch exists is actually about fill weight precision, and this is the part most people never think about. When a capsule filling machine loads powder into the body, it does so using a dosing disc or tamping pins that compress a measured plug of powder. That plug has to stay intact until the cap snaps over it. A capsule without a positive lock can spring back open a fraction of a millimeter during the capping stage, disrupting the powder plug and causing fill weight variation. Even a 2 or 3% variation in fill weight for a narrow therapeutic index drug, something like warfarin or levothyroxine where the dose window is tight, is the difference between therapeutic and toxic. The locking groove means the moment of snap closure is consistent and audible on a well-maintained machine. Line operators actually listen for that sound. A run that goes quiet, where capsules are not snapping, triggers a line stop. The system has failed. In the early 2000s, counterfeit versions of Lipitor, atorvastatin, one of the best-selling drugs in history, were found in several U.S. pharmacy supply chains. The counterfeit capsules used shells without proper locking grooves, and forensic inspectors identified them partly because the seam geometry under magnification did not match the Parke-Davis specification. The groove depth and bead radius are proprietary to each capsule manufacturer and are considered physical authentication features. The counterfeiters had the color right, the size right, the imprint code right, but the tooling that makes the groove requires injection-molded pin dies machined to tolerances under 50 microns, and cutting that corner was what gave them away. The same snap-lock logic shows up in places you would not expect. The BNC connector on a coaxial cable uses a bayonet groove and locking ring for the same reason. Positive mechanical engagement that cannot be undone by vibration alone. Battery compartment covers on medical devices use a quarter-turn locking geometry that is functionally identical to the capsule groove. Child-proof pill bottles use a ratcheting ring that requires simultaneous downward pressure and rotation. Again, a groove and bead system, just scaled up and made deliberate instead of automatic. Whenever engineers need a connection that must hold under variable environmental conditions, but must also be opened intentionally and quickly, they reach for some version of the groove and bead geometry. The capsule just happens to be the smallest, cheapest, and most ubiquitous version of it on the planet. That tiny notch is a mechanical lock, a tamper record, a fill quality checkpoint, and a counterfeit fingerprint, doing 4 jobs at a scale too small to see without a loop. The engineering is hiding in plain sight, exactly where most engineering lives. If this is your kind of thing, the why behind the everyday, Object Theory drops new ones Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.